Okay, just to loosen up a bit, everybody knows the song. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will really show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. All right, okay, that's my own, get the jangle out. Okay. Thank y'all for having me. I have a long background. I was interested in everything, so I studied everything in school. One of my brothers, me and my brother, one of my older brothers, we both graduated from Cal Poly Pomona. He went through and graduated in 3.5 years. That's because he went and did a 6-month internship somewhere, and then I graduated in 8.5 years. My brother used to ask me, "What the heck are you doing?" I was like, "What, man? College is all these friends, all the stuff I can do, intramural, we got a pool behind the door. Like, why would I ever want to go anywhere else?" I love Cal Poly. Lived in the dorms a couple years, great. My brother used to be like, what are you doing? Why are you taking all those classes? I love school. So yeah, I have an undergraduate degree from Cal Poly Pomona, and then I was blessed. I used to always love UCLA when I was a kid. Just to give you guys a little taste, I grew up watching, then it was Lou Alcindor, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like there was this group of men, young men, who were going to UCLA that impressed the heck out of me. I don't know, and those guys, I wanted to be like them. I used to be like, man, if I Ralph Bunche, like all the people who went to UCLA, Arthur Ashe, y'all know all the people who went to UCLA. I used to be like, man, it must be some kind of, could I get in there? Could I do that? And so I did it, and I loved my experience there. And I may weave a bit more of that in. I'm gonna cuss, then I don't cuss in my presentations. I'll use euphemism, I'm gonna cuss, okay? We got a new acronym now, SHIT, okay? Now, ain't nothing new, y'all heard that yesterday, so I'm quoting. But SHIT is social, historical, institutional trauma, okay? We've left out a major source of trauma, which is the institutions that we grow up in at school. Sometimes that's traumatic, right? Did anybody ever experience any trauma in the school when they was younger? Okay, racial trauma, stigmatism, all those things. Anybody ever walk into an institution and not be respected? Raise your hand if that's been the case for you. Okay, that's institutional trauma. Some of them are institutions that your taxpayer money pays for, right? You're not paying to go there and get disrespected. Sometimes it's money that I'm working hard for. It's been my insurance, my job-based insurance. You know what I mean? Job-based insurance. I go in there, and if I don't say, you know what, my name is Dr. Randal Henry. I work for the county as an epidemiologist. I served as the director of a quality of center of excellence for the Department of Defense assigned to the Veterans Health Administration. And I need you to treat me with the level of care that I understand you are trained to provide. Anybody ever have to do that in the medical? Anybody ever have to advocate for a loved one in a hospital or care center? Anybody do that? Is that traumatic? Yeah. Good. So just as we get started, y'all agree that adding institutional to social historical trauma is an appropriate addition? Okay, so, that's what shit is to me, because I was like, it's a lot of, when she was saying that, excuse me, I don't know, because sometimes I come up with these weird acronyms for stuff, and that one's not too weird. I was like, this is true. Okay, so I founded an organization. I'm a recovered public employee. I work for the state, I work for the city, I work for the county, and I work for the Department of Defense, right? I've been through all the levels of government. And Lord have mercy. Okay, I'm on recovery plan. I'm on a 12-step from the government. Okay, it's tough. It's tough to work in institutions. It's tough to work in institutions that don't value you. All right? That's tough, right? And sometimes y'all know it when you're in there. You're like, why aren't they listening to me? Why is my voice not heard when I'm sitting at the table? I'm the one black person at the table, and I'm telling you, you hired me. I done jumped through every hoop to get here, and then y'all don't listen to me. What the is that? Y'all know what I'm talking about sometimes. It's unable. This doesn't just happen to black men, it happens to women. Like I worked in a hospital setting that's male dominated, right? And there's a lot of dynamic women, but in the VA, it's a male dominated paradigm. So I would see smart, intelligent women there that weren't getting listened to. And I would be like, dang, you know, they won't even listen to her. She went to the same school. She went to Harvard too. You know, y'all know what I'm talking about. So I was sitting there one day in the VA, and I was like, the intelligence community, y'all know what you're talking about. There's a lot of stuff in the intelligence community. I work for the Department of Defense, right? So there was people in there, part of the intelligence community. I had a federal clearance and all that stuff. And they was talking about intelligence. I was like, y'all couldn't go into my community and do a dang thing. You don't have no social intelligence. You guys know what I'm talking about? When I'm like some people at that level. And so one day I was like, my community is smart. My community is intelligent. Y'all don't know how, you don't see what the intelligence is in my community. You know, so I was like, community intelligence. I was like, oh, that's cool, you know. So the name came to me like that. And then after that, I knew I was quitting the government. I was like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna quit my government job. Good thing I had the support of my wife. She didn't think I was crazy when I came. Well, guess what? I'm quitting my government job. And yeah, Christmas is coming up, all that, but I'm quitting. I've got to do something for the community, right? So I'll tell y'all more about community intelligence. Community intelligence is, let me see if I can get this right, okay? Sorry if you can't read that. Community intelligence is not about telling Beverly Hills that they're smart and Watts is dumb, okay? That's what some people think when I say, oh, community intelligence, you know? Say, no, that's not what it's about. Community intelligence is about, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
If I step away, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I can hear myself better do that. No. Community intelligence is about, that's not on. It's not on? Is it on now? Yeah. Is it good now? Okay. It's on now? Okay, thank you. So, community intelligence is about the capacity of underserved, you know, historically disadvantaged, underfunded, depopulated communities, their ability to address the problems with which they're confronted, which to some people may seem like it's in socially inappropriate ways, but I don't make a value judgment on it. I don't make a value judgment on my uncle stealing electricity. Y'all know what I'm saying? I don't make a value judgment on leaving the oven on for the heater. It's all stuff I grew up with, you know. Like, that was the only way we could make it happen. If my uncle didn't steal the electricity, we were sitting up in the dark, right? My uncle could do everything. He was the one that could fix everything. He was a junkie. I love him to this day. He'd do anything for me. But he was a junkie alcoholic, okay, who loved his family. And people in the community could come call on him for different things. Like, he displayed a genius. I'm like, damn, you're a junkie and alcoholic, but yet you know how to do plumbing, you know how to fix a car, you know how to love your nephew despite that, buy me tennis shoes when I need, you know, I don't know how it came up. Mom, I need some shoes. One day I was playing, the bottom of my shoes came off. Okay, we didn't have a lot of I was single child, my mother's single parent, 6 kids right there. So sometimes looking at my shoes and seeing how they was doing wasn't as important as putting food on the table, so she might not notice. Like now I notice that my kid, I like shoes, y'all check them out. Yeah, my wife be asking me, why you got so many boxes of shoes? Do anybody else like shoes in here? Okay, one time I got teased, I was running, my bottom of my soles of my shoes, this is true story. Soles of my shoes came off, right? I couldn't go to my mama because if I went to my mama and I asked for something, that created pain because she couldn't do, you don't know what I'm talking about? You ever been in that situation where you're not even gonna ask because it bring up something, but Unc could make it happen. He knew people how to do stuff, and I was always admired and loved him despite the other aspects, which he never put it up to me, but you know what's going on, you figure it out. So this is kind of in honor to my Uncle Chuck, who a lot of people would think was a bad dude, in some ways, but for me, he was like a prince who, and I was like, there's a lot of people like that in our community that they couldn't get a job because they got all this problem, been in jail and do that stuff, but they're valued to the community. So like, how do I build that up? I know it's there, I know that they're loved. So that's where community intelligence is, right? So I bring the different expertises that I have that I've gained through the course of my work over the years. And you can read what my company is about later. The purpose of this workshop is to, so this is work. This is not to hear me talk. I'm going to be shutting up in a little bit. To create an action plan. We're going to leave here, hopefully, with some idea of what we can do to improve our community. How? The mental health and well-being. That's the purpose of this workshop, right? So we're going to look at community health and mental well-being. As Lou said, I'm a doctor of public health, so I look at things from a public health model, public health approach. And so we're going to create an action plan for improving community level mental health, and I'll explain what that is. To help you to respond to those conditions that impact community health and to encourage you to take actions that can improve mental health and well-being when you return back to your organization or community. So that's my purpose. And as we get started, now I want you to, you don't have to close your eyes or anything for like that, but where there is no vision, the people shall perish, okay? So I want you to dream of a community. Think of a community where, despite the impact of that SHIT that I talked about it, and inequity, that people can realize their potential in school, work, or play, or their organization. And some of you know that the organizations aren't always set up to help you realize your full potential. I want you to think about what a community would look like if people could cope with the normal stresses of life in that community, right? If we'll talk about that some more. If people in that community were able to work productively in the emerging economy, in these socially, historically, institutionally disadvantaged communities that I'm talking about, what would it look like if everything stayed the same, but they're able to cope with life's normal stresses, right? And then what would it look like if they could make positive contributions to their community? So sometimes I just ask the question, what would it be like if our kids were able and the mechanisms were there to make positive contributions to their community in whatever way they've wanted to as children? And I'm not sure that there's vehicles there now, if all the vehicles are there for them to make positive contributions to their community. They can do it in the school setting, but how do then you connect that to the larger civic engagement? Okay, so that's a bridge that we need to cross. So that's the dream, okay, but you also need a plan, right? Dream, what's a dream without a plan is a dream, but a dream with a plan is a goal, right? And you need some action, so then we're going to create a goal. So the plan is basically to think of 3 things that can move your community forward. This is real simple. This is real simple stuff, right? Here I just put, you can organize things. You can advocate, or you could celebrate. I always get the party in, right? I always like the party. I never leave out the party. You got a party going on, call me. I want to go to the party, okay? And then when you get back, to take some action, right? You have to do something. How many strategic plans do you guys know sit on shelves? Raise your hand if you guys got a strategic plan at your organization that's not being fully implemented right now. Okay, a lot of people got that. They plan, they spend the whole time, 2 years going through a strategic planning process, and they never get to the action, right? So we want to go back doing at least one thing, right, to advance your community dream. Okay, one more definition. So a lot of people, they have an idea of what community is. So I just break it down. So communities are, start on the right side, they often have a recognized identity. So on the left, you see some recognized race, gender, sexual orientation, affinity groups, school, alumni. There's all different kind of communities that you can belong to. Those are recognized. And then there's informal communities, right? There's neighbor recognized areas. I often call it like gang boundaries are like that in LA. You guys, anybody live in areas where y'all knew the gang boundaries, but it wasn't no thing that said you are now entering, whatever. You now entering 77th Street, now you in White Fence, now you whatever. But if you live in that neighborhood, you know when you're crossing every boundary, right? And our kids have to navigate all that stuff. So those are informally recognized focus or areas. The communities that I want you to think about today are the community you love, okay, which may be the community where you live or work, okay? And then I want you to think of the organization that you work in and the people that you work with as a community for purposes of this. It'll help. Just use those two devices, a place that you love it or you work there. That'll help you out to do the exercises. So now I'm going to ask you to do some thinking. Okay, at your tables, first, just think of yourself in your own head. How many different communities do you belong to, given that definition? Okay, so for me, male, African American, Crenshaw. Just do that in your head and until you don't come up with any more communities, right? And then mentally write that number down, or write it down. So put it in your thinking caps. How many communities do you belong to? Is it where you live? Is it where you play? Is it the gym you go to? Is it the church you go to? Is it your alumni association? What have you? Those are all communities that we belong to. Gender. And so anybody belong to over 5 communities? Look around, a lot of them. Anybody belong to over 10 communities? Anybody over 15 communities? Woo! There's a lot of communities. So we have a lot of different systems that we're working in. And now that you have done that, take one community and just think about how social, historical, institutional trauma has impacted that community. Just take a second to do that. We've been thinking a lot about social, historical trauma. And then now that you've done that, at your table, you can have a conversation about the different communities that you belong to and the trauma. So y'all turn around. It's not, usually I do this in a room of 30 and we're in a circle, so it's real easy. This is kind of new for me to be up in a large group like this. So I'm not the focus of the presentation anymore. Turn to your table mates, and at your table, there's nothing up here you guys need to see. That's it. I ain't got no movies, nothing fancy, nothing to look at. It's about you. And just think about how social historical trauma. So I'll throw one out there. Women could not vote until what year? What year did women earn the right to vote? 1990. Do you know women used to get beat up for voting? Were you guys aware of that? That women who tried to vote were beaten? And did you know at one time in this country, women who rode bicycles were physically attacked by men as being degenerate women? If you don't look at the history of bicycling, physically attacked by men who thought that women should not be riding bicycles. Okay, sounds ridiculous today, but that's stuff that happened in this country, okay? So that's just a few things just to get your brain thinking. Now, go at it and take about 5-7 minutes just to have a little conversation and process some of the trauma that our communities have gone through. we're going to take one more minute for this. Thank you. Sorry, 5 minutes goes really fast sometimes.
So I run a nonprofit. We have race relations dialogues. We teach nonprofits. So all these different things that I'm a part of now are very, there's a lot of people who have come together to heal trauma. That's the purpose. I grew up in a very economically divided mining town, Pennsylvania, in very violent. And so what I'm realizing looking at this is I'm not subjected to it personally.
Okay, everyone, I hate to cut off the conversations. We have, this is gonna just, we're gonna just touch on a few things, and we'll have more time to talk. One of the things that I wanted to do in this part of the conference was give us a little bit more time to process, because it creates a lot of energy. And so, I hope everyone got a chance at least to hear that our communities are impacted, that there's probably not one of us in here who wasn't able to bring up some aspect of social, historical, or institutional trauma. It's just the way the world is. And so we'll hopefully have some more time to talk about that, in this short period of time that we have. Just to quickly kind of go over what I mentioned this at the beginning. This is what the World Health Organization looked at, the social determinants of health, and then there was a sub-study done on what are the social determinants of mental health. And as part of that, they put forth the definition of mental health, which goes that mental health is a state of well-being where people can realize their own potential, those things that I mentioned in the beginning. Cope with normal stresses of life, work productively, and make meaningful contributions to their community. That's what mental health is. And this definition is not limited to the absence of mental disorders or mental conditions. In fact, I used to work with, I mentioned I worked with developmentally disabled kids. In fact, I was what they call a qualified mental retardation professional, and I ran intermediate care facilities for developmentally disabled prior to pursuing more education. And I used to work with developmentally disabled people who got married. Some of them had kids. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, the fact that they had certain conditions did not impact their ability to have well-being, right? So this is independent of that sort of, oh, you need to be normal cognitive functioning. No, you don't. You can still have, different conditions and experience states of well-being and experience quote unquote mental health, which is an interesting concept. So now that we talked a little bit about the trauma, and you have that cursory definition of community, which you could be talked about deeper, and of mental health, I want you to think about one of these components of mental health, right? Look at one of those four components and create a vision in your mind where it said, dream of that community that's free from them. Return back to that. Now start filling out that community in your head. Like in my community, are the people hanging around the liquor store? No, they don't need to hang around the liquor store no more because they got something positive to do. You know what I mean? Like they got work to go to, or they're employed in a way, or whatever that means. And then at your tables now, you can talk about what would it look like in that community if your vision was realized. What would it look like? That trauma that you talked about at your tables, what would it look like if that was removed? What would women feel like if they never ever had to be fearful of domestic violence again? Think about that. If women could walk down the street without or fear of sexual violence, like in my neighborhood, there's some places, unfortunately, where after a certain time of evening, a woman will not walk down to the store by herself. But I, as a man, I can get on down, I can roll down the street. It's 8:30, it's dark at night. I can do it, no problem. If you ask a woman, hey, go to the store by yourself at a certain time of night, she might be, Women, raise your hand if do any women experience that? Are any women ever afraid to walk the street in their neighborhood after a certain time, whereas you might not be afraid in the daytime to do that? Okay, that's a form of trauma to you. To me, it's a form of trauma. I want that to be erased because it means that you're internalizing, that there's an internalized fear, which is a form of trauma, right? You've internalized something about your neighborhood. So I try to envision a neighborhood where if I had a daughter or my wife, which I do have, can walk down the street, and when she goes out at night, I don't have to think about her safety. You understand? That's one of the things, that's the stress for me. Is my wife going to be okay when she goes out for a walk by herself in the evening to have a little time by herself before she has to come and deal with the kids' homework, deal with me, and do all the other stuff she has to do, you know, as a wife and mother, right? So that's just to give you some starters. Now, you can, Asada, if you want to return to some of that trauma, you have license to talk about whatever trauma you want to talk about during this next 5 minutes. Yeah, you got license, girl. And the rest of y'all, now, because we're going to work towards a community, think about what does that look like in your mind? Pick one. If you're from a school, you might think, what would it look like if my children could make positive contributions, right? What does that look like? And you can operationalize that for yourself. But this is work for you to do at your tables. If you're in groups, you know, to return and talk about this. This is work that you do. Normally I do this in a smaller group, so it's a little bit easier for me to walk around and get people to do it. But can you guys start? We'll take a few minutes to talk about that. What does the world look like in that setting? So have at it. Conversations, the time goes so fast. I see people still talking, and I really enjoy that. Like Dr. DeGrew was saying, and my family all talks at once, so we just jump in. So excuse me for talking over folks is like the family stuff. But I hope that was provoked some thought on your part about what your community might actually look like if things were different than they are now. Again, my work, I tend to de-emphasize myself, and so, you know, I'm usually not up here talking. My job, I'm like the stir. I want to, you know, Reggie Jackson. Y'all remember Mr. October? Y'all remember he was the straw that stirred the drink. Okay, I'm not saying I ain't no Reggie Jackson or anything like that, but I like to see the drink mixed up. I'm not about me, so usually I'm not up here talking like this. I'm usually trying to get people to engage in the actual work. And so this is just a taste of that. But I want you to think about the conversations that need to be had, the vision that needs to be created, and the things that you've heard from people about how they feel about the different communities that they're in, or what their fears are. And, you know, at a visceral level, this is how we're really going to make a more healthier community, right? I'm going to skip that slide to get to this one. All of the stuff that I'm talking about, even though it's typically for like at a community level, is all scientifically validated, and have a paper that if you want to see who the authors are and what theories I've referred to, and do all that stuff if you want the scientific evidence-based you know, substantiation for the work. I can provide all that to you in a number of reports. But that's not the work that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help heal communities. So I try to talk to them in a way that I don't come off like a egghead professor, right? Because it doesn't go over, and people aren't looking for somebody to be their professor in the community. I'm going to go through a few things quickly because the time's running fast. This is the social determinants of health. Guess what? The social determinants of mental health are exactly the same. Okay, people need economic security. Now, you know, think about the youth that were sitting up here. You think they feel some economic insecurity? Right? Do you think that those young people might be concerned about being able to work in an emerging economy, as I mentioned? Given that, you know, as Federico said, some people view them as being the future dishwashers of America, you know, but that's not going to cut it in an emerging American economy, right? So they might be worried about that. You could hear it in the young man's when he said, hacer alguien, I want to make something of myself, right? And that doesn't mean, you know, a dishwasher is an honorable, honest profession, right? But you may want to be more than that. And how do you achieve that? If that's what your goal is, fine, do that, be honest. I'll respect you from here to the day's end. You know what I mean? But maybe you want something more. You know, my first job was as a security guard. I was walking around at a hospital. I used to look at the doctors. And one day I was like, I just asked the doctor, how did you get to be a doctor? He's like, dude, just go to school and choose something. My brother had already gone. I followed him afterwards. I was like, man, that dude wasn't that even much older than me. You know, now I'm whatever, you know. So, or take the second domain, parks and safe play. Anybody grow up in a neighborhood where going to the park was a life or death matter? Okay, I lived in the jungle. Y'all know Jim Gilliam Park, the Black Pea Stone. If you went up to the park, every time you went to the park, somebody challenged you. Pretty soon you stopped going to the park. I wasn't trying to be with that. You know what I mean? So that was the determinant of my mental health. Like, am I going to be safe getting home when you're as an African-American teenager, sometimes in certain neighborhood, the way it was in crack-infested LA was, am I going to get home all right without somebody messing with me trying to take, you nod your head, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Literacy, early childhood reading, you know, all these things, food, access, hunger. Coming home and we ate government cheese, right? Y'all remember that? We got all the government cheese, powdered milk. Anybody drink powdered milk? Nastiest stuff ever. I don't even like 2% milk now because it looked too watery, like powdered milk. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You guys know powdered milk is horrible. Okay, but that's what they was giving away. Remember the big government food giveaway? Even when these things are met, sometimes institutionally though, they're not done in a way that uplifts the people who they're trying to help. That's why I said create a vision in your mind. What would it look like if it was mentally healthy? And for me, mentally healthy means, and many speakers talked about this, if you are not uplifting, if the people you are serving in your school, in your food service program, if they don't feel uplifted when they leave, then you should think about how you're doing what you're doing, right? Because really what's really going to change communities is uplifting the spirit of the people in the communities. Okay, you have to be able to touch their spirit. And so the social determinants don't really get at that. They just talk about basic needs, okay? But they're an important starting point. Now, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm gonna skip this, but I want you to think about these. What's most important to you in terms of making, the community healthier, mentally healthier? Like, if economic stability, right? That's an important part of communities, right? Like, so some people say that we need jobs, right? If people have jobs, they'll be able to feed their kids, then food security will go away. Housing insecurity will go away, right? Those are two big sources of stress, food insecurity and housing insecurity. That's tied to job. You got a job, you got job-based insurance, right? So many times you can have access to that. So that means if you get sick, something happens to you, you can take care of that, right? So some people put that as the highest. Some people say, well, living next to this oil pumping thing. You guys know there's oil pumps all throughout urban Los Angeles, right? Just a couple of blocks from USC, it's oil pumping right in the neighborhood within 500 feet of people's house, right? And then there's elevated cancer levels. When you look at that, elevated cancer levels. So some people say, no, we need the physical built environment to be healthier and contribute to our health. That's what's most important. We need clean water, clean air, clean food, nutritious food. That's what they think. Or if you ask me when I was a teenager, say, I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I don't like this situation that I'm doing where, I got to go back and forth every day. It's going back and forth through this. I'm not with that, Some people say education. This is what my mother preached. Son, it's not where you are now, it's where you want to be. It's not where you are now. So she was like, you gotta focus no matter what circumstances are happening in our household, you gotta keep it together because that's your vehicle, right? That's your thing. They can't take that away from you. It's free. They're giving it to you for free. And all you have to do is do the uptake and learning. That was what my mother preached to me. She was like, education, education, and then get some more education, right? Some people think it's the community and social context, like being tied to social institutions, like churches. For me, I wasn't really about church. I was running away from church fast as I could. So it was like football teams, baseball teams, stuff like that, people who could mentor me, but I didn't have to deal with what I felt was a judgment because I had a lot of behaviors that people thought was anti-social or did things that wasn't cool. I smoked weed, whatever, Like people didn't think that was cool. If you go to church, you smoke weed, and you tell people, oh, you smoke weed. What ladies said, why you smoking weed? I was self-medicating, you know what I mean? Like was having such a hard time. That was like, I didn't drink, I didn't do other stuff, so I smoked some weed. But I would get down in some environment, so I just turn that environment off, But some people say, oh, you should go to church, that'll help you. I'll be like, it ain't really helping me. It's not really helping me, I need something else. But I do believe in the power of the institution of church. And I have a spiritual tie, and now I work with pastors like Reverend Kevin Sauls from Holman United Methodist Church, and I believe in the power. I believe we will not advance as a community, especially the African American community, but the Latino community, the Serbian community, the Jewish community, whatever community that you name, if the church institutions and your strong institutions are not part of it, whatever your belief system is, it ain't gonna go forward. That's an important part of your community and the strength in it. It's a group of people that are organized. So some people put that forward as the most important thing. Then some people say healthcare or mental health care is like a thing. But I find for my community, we scared to death to go to the, ain't that funny? We scared to death to go to the hospital. I know some people, they like, I don't care what happened, don't take me to the hospital. Do anybody know any family like that? Okay, look, just raise your hands if y'all know somebody. I don't care what happened, don't take me to the hospital, right? I went into the hospital for a simple thing. I got y'all, anybody here, MRSA? MRSA, okay? Went in for a procedure, got MRSA in the hospital. 3 months they had to do it, you know what I'm saying? Then one day I was out there, my wife will tell you this. I was out there because I do martial arts, right? So I've been a lifelong martial artist. That's been the thing, keep me up. So I was sick. I was like, oh man, I gotta do my martial art. Oh. I was out there, I got hot. I got woozy, fell out. My eyes rolled in the back of my head. I woke up, my wife's looking at me, honey, you all right? I didn't know what happened. Anybody ever pass out and then you don't know what happened to you? Anybody ever have that experience? You don't know, like everybody looking at you like, what's wrong with you? First words out of my mouth, don't take my ass to the hospital. She started laughing. Anybody knows my wife can ask me. I was like, do not take me to the hospital. Why? Because they just gave me MRSA. So for me, I believe in public health, right? So I would not put the healthcare, as a doctor of public health, I would not put the healthcare system up there as first, which is probably a shame on the profession. I don't know, And the mental health care system does not work for a lot of people. Regardless of who you are, it doesn't work. For men in particular, though, okay, how do men do health? We do it like them kids. It has to be organic. It has to be me on the fishing trip with the guys, and then we out there, and we be out there a couple of days or whatever, we drinking beer, man, so how things, man, them kids, man, blah, 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 man, then we talk about wife stuff. Anybody married in here? You guys married in here? Y'all know if you're married, you need some time to talk about that married stuff, right? You got to blow off some steam or whatever. You ain't trying to dog nobody out, but you just need to talk about what's happening, right? So that's what dudes do. We are not going to go sit. Many of us find it difficult to sit, especially when you don't feel that the person has a cultural affinity with you, that the cultural cues ain't right. We're going to sit there. So, Mr. Henry, how you doing today? Fine. Anything wrong? No. How's things been going? Same old stuff going on all the time, right? Anybody know that? You know, that's how I do. I climb up. My wife be like, didn't you want to talk about it? I'm like, not in this environment. They can't help me. So but that's an important part. We needed to be more culturally sensitive. So you guys know about class standards, right? Class, culturally, linguistically appropriate, right? Things need to be culturally and linguistically appropriate, right? Whatever that means for you. So those are, we'll skip over that because there's an exercise that I want you to do. WHO, the World Health Organization, also looked at what is well-being, right? This is more important to me than the definition of mental health, which is typically a diagnostical, statistical manual sort of definition. And they identified that your well-being and the well-being of our communities goes far beyond just the physical manifestation of being okay. And it looks into, do you have purpose, right? And what is purpose? It's liking what you do each day. When you get up and you're excited to go do what you want to do, you feel motivated to achieve your goals, you have a future orientation, right? That's what purpose is, future orientation. It's not, I'll be dead by 21. That's not purpose, right? I'm likely to get shot or something happen to me. The social component, having supportive relationships in your life. Okay, for me, there was a person, Mr. Warner. Okay, one day I was I got paddled almost every day in my 4th grade class. Every day, they could paddle people. I took it as a badge of honor. Okay, if I couldn't cut up enough to get paddled, my day was not successful. And then I engaged a partner, Scott. His name was Scott Humphrey. Me and Scott, boy, we was cutting. He was divorced too. His parents was divorced, and he was going through a hard situation too. We buddied up, and boy, we was terrorized the 4th grade. Every day I cut up. That was my goal. Anybody know any kids like that? Anybody? That was me. I needed attention. There was problems, in my setting that I needed some attention. People was acting out. I was a smart kid, but I was acting out. Supportive relationship. One teacher asked me, I was cutting up, and his question was, "Are you hungry?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm hungry. I didn't have breakfast this morning. We didn't have much to eat last night." He said, "Come on to the cafeteria with me." That's when and I went and he gave me a job serving the food in the cafeteria. Let me get out of class before the thing to go eat lunch and then work in the cafeteria, and I could eat stuff in my pockets and take it home. And you know what? I didn't get paddled any after that. In fact, I ended up being on the Supreme Court, the school Supreme Court of the thing. They put the bag to one that was cutting up. I knew a lot about adjudication of justice in the school up there because I was in the principal's office a lot. So they all knew me, and they knew I had a mouth going 40 miles a minute too. Financial, and now this is a tough one. This financial thing, right? That's a tough one. How do you get well-being in these economic times, right? So that's an element of well-being. For me, community is important. Liking where you live. How many people, like I live in Crenshaw, it's beautiful. Dr. Erica Holm, I mentioned, bought her brother's house. He loved it. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. There's people, when you say you live in Crenshaw, because they done heard all this stuff, seen Friday Night 3 with Crenshaw on the front and heard it all wrapped up in music, they think they come into the hood when they go to Crenshaw Baldwin Hills Mall. Or if you say, I went to Dorsey for a year, or if you say, I went to Crenshaw, don't let you say you went to Manual Arts or Jefferson or something like that. These are a few schools I mentioned it, right? And people have a certain connotation with it where the student, or Inglewood High, people start viewing it as a badge of negativity, like Howard Penderhughes was saying, where they don't even want to say where they're from. And then there's the physical aspect too. Just to show you guys how bad off America is doing in this, that I don't say this is bad. What I really want to point out here is that these are, Gallup poll does a poll where they engage thousands of individuals across the country in a talk about the state of well-being in their communities using those 5 dimensions that I just talked about. And they have them rank them on a score of 0 being the most, lowest level of well-being and 100 being the highest level of well-being. Well, here in this community, you'll see that the community with the highest level of well-being was at 66.3, and the community with the lowest level of well-being was at 57.5. It's not that far apart. It's not that far apart. What that means is that a lot of people in those communities are not experiencing those 5 dimensions of well-being that I described at the highest level. Just for interest, where's Los Angeles? Okay, we're number 53. We're at 62.8, but the highest one is only 66.3, right? So just overall, we have, as a country, we have a long way to go towards being mentally healthy, right? So just want us to understand that, and how that's important to our work as educators, public health people, is to actually work on improving mental health and well-being. I'm going to skip this one too, but in your mind, as we go on to the last one, and Roxy, could you hand out this? This is Roxy Rivas. She's helping me today. She's been great. Helped me with some thoughts. She works for Prevention Institute. She's been just amazing for me to be supported by her right now. Think about how you would rank those, because we can't do everything, right? You got people working on housing policy, economic policy, but in your environment, there should be supports that address each one of these aspects of well-being if you think mental health and well-being is an important part of your community's needs, if you think improving that. This are the models, the constructs of the model that you need. So what did I do? I wrote a framework. I took all the learning that I've done in the different communities that I've done in over the years, and I came up with, what community intelligence is. I defined it. There wasn't any definition for it. And so basically, what community intelligence does is address conditions like mental health, well-being, respond in creative ways, and assess the impact of initiatives. Okay, so we're going to go, let's see, which one is it? We're going to go through an exercise which Roxy is passing around papers to help us with. High levels of community intelligence are indicated by historically disadvantaged communities, their efforts, and the organizations that serve them efforts to develop a healthy, vibrant, sustainable environment in which there's these dimensions: a high quality of life, which is where they live, work, play, exercise, eat, go to school, shop, good mental health, overall mental health status, and a beneficial environment, okay, is enjoyed by all its inhabitants. The framework for advancing community intelligence is the vehicle for getting there. The main thing emphasizes people power. I'm going through these quickly so we can do the exercise and then be done. There's empowerment activities to inform, engage, and strengthen. There's systemic thinking to clarify how local systems and issues are interrelated and connected to the larger community, county, state, federal, and/or international systems and issues, as well as implementation science, which is my core doctoral training, which is the science of examining how evidence-based practices are incorporated into routine daily work. Okay, that's what implementation scientists do. And so this is to engage, strengthen, and empower individuals in that area. There's 9 domains. You may have a worksheet in front of you that you can look at that describes the key elements of the framework. Again, these are all substantiated by the literature in ways that I can provide to you. And on the right side, you'll see that in the middle that there are sets of activities that correspond to those domains. right? So now as we wrap up, and I want you to think about keeping your vision in mind. Just take a pencil or pen and select 3 of those 9 activities that seem important to you. Okay, there's people that are like doing research, right? Like me, right? So I do information gathering. There's people who want to diagnose problems and plan. There's people who prefer to engage in conversation about the issues facing the community. There's people who are doing healing work. People who believe in partnership and visioning or empowerment and participation of the community. There are people doing reflection on problems. Like there's different ways we can approach this. Invention and discovery relates to creating new things for your community. And then the part I love is the celebration and enjoyment. There's people who can advance community health by looking at the good things in the community and creating ways to uplift them. Those things like Women's History Month is an example of that. That's a celebration and enjoyment of the contributions that women, the significant contribution that women have made to our society, right? And we celebrate and we enjoy that. Some people have parties for it. Black History Month is the same thing. Dr. Aressa Allen Rochester's was tremendous. She even got up and danced at the thing. I loved it. I wish y'all could see their celebration of Black History Month. It was fantastic. So as you look at, pick 3, and then from the middle, you'll think about at least 3 things of these activities and put one of them in each box. There's no right, there's no wrong here. These can be done linearly, they can be done non-linearly. These are meant to exist on their own in space and time. They're just things that we can do. All things contribute to the good. So you would look at that and say, well, okay, I like celebration and enjoyment. Okay, so praising, right? If I'm in school, specific example, I could go back to my school and I could say, today I'm gonna only look for kids, only look for good things. I'm not going to mention any negative thing that a kid does today. I'm having a negative holiday. You guys, you hear me? I'm having a negative holiday, and I'm only praising the good things. I'm going to look for good things today, and I'm going to praise it. I don't care how small it is. Wow, Johnny, you got your pencils today. Johnny may never bring the pencil. There's that kid who always loses pencil. Or he's got his notebook today, but he's talking in class. I'm going to ignore that and say, you know what? I like how you have your book out and you're ready to go. That's praising, but you can't praise and denigrate at the same time. You have to pick something, or you could reflect and contemplate, right? You can go to your school and you can say, well, today the teacher wants to learn. Tell me about how you're feeling in the class, right? Tell me, how do you feel in the class? Do you feel good? Do you feel however you feel about it? These are things that we can do. And so you just pick 3 things, and then you'll go back and work on that, all right? So the time has gone amazingly fast right now. And what I want you to do is to understand is that this is part of a process. So now I'm going to do a commercial for it. I work on health all throughout the county, and serve in a lot of different communities, right? I do a lot of organizing and advocacy work at a strategic level. In October, on October 9th, we're having a conference where we're going to be focusing on these issues in a much broader way. In the meantime, we're having a set of meetings that lead us up to that. So on October 29th, there's a Men and Boys of Color. I'm having a symposium which looks at Men and Boys of Color program throughout Los Angeles County. We have people from the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, Hawthorne, Lawndale, Inglewood, Long Beach, and Centinela Valley, and folks from Sacramento, folks from Fresno, and folks from Oakland got wind of it, are coming down to see what we're doing here in LA County in terms of our men and boys of color and young women and girls of color initiatives. And as we move forward, there are a varied set of activities. If you'd like to know about those, you can contact me. So just quick wrap up. I'll have my information at the end. Okay, this workshop, as brief as it was to help us think about having a plan for improving mental health and well-being in our community. Okay, it's just very cursory introduction. Usually I do this, this is a whole day workshop, right? We explored some key concepts that you can learn about: community, social determinants of health, so on and so forth. We did a brief prioritization of issues, and now we created a plan to move us from vision to action. On your paper, these are simple activities. So now I just want you in your own heart, you don't have to say anything, but commit yourself that when you go back to your environment, that you have been changed by this conference that we've talked about, right? You've heard all this information, but if you don't act upon it, right? What happens? If you don't do anything, it's not worth anything. So please just think of one thing that you can do and do that, and I will be so grateful to you, and your community will. And on that note, I'm going to say I wish I had a full 4 hours to talk to you. Your presence at this conference has been wonderful for me personally. Seeing the multicultural aspect of this conference is beautiful. This is the LA that I know and love. And I hope that this conference inspires you to go back and do work that impacts the issues that we've been here focusing on today. Thank you, and hope you get home safe.